For me, it was frightening on a couple of levels because I've never, in all the time that I've been coming to London, and
A dusty storage unit in Burbank, California sits locked and forgotten for 3 whole decades. Inside, the biggest secrets of one of America's most famous entertainers wait in the darkness. When they finally broke it open, what they found inside changed everything we thought we knew about Sammy Davis Jr. This isn't just another celebrity story. This is about hidden truths, dangerous love affairs, and secrets so explosive they could have destroyed entire careers. What you're about to hear will shock you. Because the man who seemed to live his entire life in the spotlight had been hiding some of the biggest secrets in Hollywood history. And when that storage unit door finally creaked open after 30 years of silence, investigators couldn't believe their eyes. Let me take you back to where this incredible story really begins. Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't just any entertainer. He was a force of nature who broke down barriers that seemed impossible to break. But behind all the glitz and glamour, behind the bright lights of Las Vegas and the movie cameras of Hollywood, Sammy was documenting everything. Every conversation, every threat, every secret deal that happened behind closed doors. Born in Harlem in 1925, Sammy entered a world that didn't want him to succeed. His parents were vaudeville performers, which meant show business was literally in his blood from day one. But here's something most people don't know. His mother was Cuban, and the family kept this fact hidden because of the anti-Cuban feelings in America at that time. Even as a baby, Sammy's life was already being shaped by the need to hide parts of who he really was. Can you imagine being 2 years old and already performing on stage? While other kids were learning to walk properly, Sammy was dancing and singing in theaters across the country. The spotlight became his playground, but it came with a terrible price. He never had a normal childhood. He never went to school like other kids. Instead, he learned about life from the road, from the stages he performed on, and from the ugly face of racism that followed him everywhere. When Sammy was just 3 years old, his parents split up. His father took custody and brought him even deeper into show business. A man named Will Maston became like a godfather to him, trying to protect him as much as he could. But there was only so much protection anyone could offer a black child performer in 1920s America. Sammy saw the signs that said, "Whites only," and felt the sting of being treated like he was less than human. But instead of breaking him, this fire inside him to break barriers started burning brighter and brighter. By age 7, Sammy was already making movies. He starred in a film called Rufus Jones for President, alongside Ethel Waters. The movie dared to imagine a black boy as President of the United States. In a time when black faces were almost never seen in Hollywood, Sammy's charm and talent lit up the screen. People couldn't help but look past the color of his skin, if only for a few minutes. This was just a hint of what was coming. But then came 1943, and everything changed. At 18 years old, standing just 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing only 120 pounds, Sammy was drafted into the U.S. Army. He left the safety of the stage and entered a world that was far more cruel than anything he had experienced before. The Army promised integrated units, but that promise was a complete lie. What happened to Sammy in the military was absolutely horrific. The first soldier he met called him a racial slur. From that moment on, he faced fights and hate almost every single day. The abuse he suffered was beyond shocking. White soldiers kidnapped him and painted him white from head to toe, mocking everything he was. They tricked him into drinking beer that was mixed with urine. Some nights, they actually urinated on him while he slept. His nose was broken 3 times by fellow soldiers. But perhaps the most disturbing thing they did was force him to perform while they scrawled racial slurs on his forehead. They would shove him on stage like some kind of circus act, trying to humiliate him in front of everyone. The cruelty seemed endless, and it was all designed to crush his spirit completely. One night stands out as particularly horrific. Soldiers tied Sammy to a tree in the freezing cold and left him there helpless. As he stood there in the bitter cold, he realized this was meant to be a message. No matter where he went, no matter what he achieved, they wanted him to remember what they thought his place was. The army that was supposed to protect him looked the other way while the hate festered and grew. The worst attack put Sammy in the hospital for 3 days after a group of soldiers beat him so badly he could barely move. The beating wasn't random. It was calculated punishment. But nobody was ever held accountable for what they did to him. Lying in that hospital bed, Sammy realized he had to survive on his own strength and his own terms. The pain drove him to very dark places. He thought about ending it all. The weight of the hate and the endless cruelty almost broke him completely. But something deep inside pulled him back from the edge. When he finally joined the Army's entertainment unit, he found his weapon. His voice, his dancing, his incredible showmanship. Even the men who hated him couldn't deny his talent. When they applauded, it gave him power. It gave him hope. When Sammy came back from military service in 1951, he was ready to take on the world. He had fought for his country, and now he wanted to fight for his rightful place in show business. That chance came at Ciro's, the most glamorous nightclub on Sunset Boulevard. It was March 1951, and Sammy was performing as part of the Will Maston Trio, opening for Janice Page. The night was absolutely magical. But after the Academy Awards that same year, something incredible happened that changed everything. The room filled up with the biggest stars in Hollywood. Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, Cary Grant, Marilyn Monroe, and Judy Garland all watched in complete awe as Sammy delivered a performance that made him a star overnight. The buzz was unstoppable. Booking requests poured in from everywhere. In 1952, he appeared on The Colgate Comedy Hour, and even got offered a $20,000 TV pilot from ABC. This was absolutely unheard of for a black entertainer at that time. Even though no sponsor would back it, Sammy had already broken through barriers that seemed impossible to break. But then tragedy struck on November 19, 1954. Sammy was just 29 years old, driving his Cadillac from Las Vegas to Los Angeles on the famous Route 66. Another car backed into his lane at a fork in the road. The crash was so violent that it forced the car's horn button directly into his left eye. The damage was permanent and devastating. He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors couldn't save his eye. Many people thought his career was completely over. How could a one-eyed performer possibly make it in Hollywood? But just 8 weeks later, Sammy was back on stage at Ciro's, absolutely dazzling Hollywood's finest once again. He wore an eye patch at first, then switched to a glass eye. He even joked about it, calling himself a one-eyed Negro who's Jewish. That accident changed Sammy's life in another profound way. While he was recovering, he started reading about the Jewish people's long struggle to survive throughout history. A friend named Eddie Cantor had given him a mezuzah and talked to him about faith. Sammy felt a deep connection to their story of perseverance. He said he had always been Jewish in his thinking, and in 1960, he officially converted to Judaism. Many people mocked him for this decision, but Sammy believed that being both black and Jewish made him stronger. He understood what it meant to be part of not just one, but two groups that had faced centuries of persecution. He became a powerful symbol of resilience and stood up fearlessly for civil rights. Even as his fame grew bigger and bigger, Sammy continued to face cruel racism everywhere he went. In 1950s Las Vegas, he could headline the biggest shows in the city, but he couldn't stay in the hotels where he performed. He couldn't walk through the front doors or eat in the restaurants. This was completely unacceptable to Sammy, and he refused to just accept it. With the help of his friends in the Rat Pack, especially Frank Sinatra, he pressured the casinos to change their racist policies. By the early 1960s, he was earning $25,000 a week at the Sands and became the first black entertainer to actually stay at the Frontier Hotel. By 1971, Las Vegas hotels finally ended their official segregation policies. Sammy had helped make it happen through his determination and refusal to accept second-class treatment. Sammy wasn't just a singer or dancer. He was truly a master of many different talents. He taught himself to play drums, trumpet, piano, vibraphone, and many other instruments. He could mimic voices perfectly, do incredible impressions, tell hilarious jokes, dance like nobody else, and even perform amazing gun tricks. His shows were always full of surprises that nobody expected. He earned the nickname Mr. Show Business, because literally no one else could do it all like he could. But here's where our story takes a darker turn, and where those secrets in the storage unit become incredibly important. In 1957, Sammy fell deeply in love with Kim Novak, who was one of Hollywood's biggest and most beautiful stars at the time. They met on The Steve Allen Show, and the attraction was immediate and powerful. Soon they were spending holidays together and even meeting each other's families. But interracial relationships were extremely dangerous in 1950s America. Only 4% of Americans approved of black and white people being together romantically. The brutal lynching of Emmett Till was still fresh in everyone's minds. Sammy and Kim tried desperately to keep their relationship secret. Sammy would hide under blankets in cars just to travel to see her. They would meet secretly at a beach house in Malibu, always looking over their shoulders. But in January 1958, a gossip columnist falsely reported that Sammy and Kim were engaged to be married. The news spread like wildfire across the country, and the reaction was immediate and terrifying. Movie studios panicked because they thought this would destroy both of their careers. But even worse than the studios getting involved, the mob got involved. This is where those documents in the storage unit become absolutely crucial to understanding what really happened. Sammy was actually kidnapped by mobsters who had connections to Columbia Pictures. They didn't just threaten him. They told him in very clear terms that he needed to end his relationship with Kim Novak immediately, or he would lose his remaining eye. Or worse, they might kill him. Even Sam Giancana, one of the most powerful mob bosses in America, told Sammy that he couldn't protect him if he continued this relationship. Sammy was absolutely terrified for his life. On January 7, 1958, with a heavy heart and no other choice, he broke up with Kim Novak. He didn't want to do it. He had no choice if he wanted to live. Just 3 days later, on January 10th, Sammy married Lorraine White, a black singer. But this marriage was completely fake. It was a sham designed to please the mob and calm down the press. He actually paid her up to $25,000 to go through with this fake marriage. That very night, Sammy was so upset and distraught about losing Kim and being forced into this fake marriage that he tried to strangle Lorraine. Later, his assistant found him alone in his room with a gun, considering ending his own life. The fake marriage ended in April, just a few months later. Sammy's love story with Kim Novak had cost him almost everything. It showed just how dangerous it was to challenge the rules about race in 1950s America, and how far powerful people would go to keep those rules in place. But Sammy didn't give up on love completely. In 1960, he married May Britt, a beautiful Swedish actress. This marriage was more than just two people falling in love. It was a direct challenge to one of America's most deeply held taboos. At that time, interracial marriage was actually illegal in 31 states across the country. Their original plan to get married at Temple Israel of Hollywood fell apart completely when the synagogue received bomb threats and violent warnings from racist groups. They had no choice but to move the ceremony to Sammy's Hollywood Hills home. Frank Sinatra and Peter Lawford stood beside them as witnesses, showing their support despite the danger. The price for their courage was incredibly steep. People painted swastikas on their property. May lost her contract with 20th Century Fox because the studio didn't want to be associated with an interracial couple. Most shocking of all, Sammy was actually disinvited from President Kennedy's 1961 inauguration, all because of who he chose to love. They tried to raise a family together despite all the hate. They had a daughter named Tracy in 1961, and later adopted 2 sons, Mark and Jeff. But the harassment never stopped. People would scrawl racial slurs on their cars. Their home was repeatedly defaced with swastikas and hate messages. Sammy and May tried their best to protect their children by surrounding them with friends who judged people by their talent and character, not by the color of their skin. But the world outside their protective bubble could be incredibly cruel. Tracy later said that she sometimes felt completely safe at home, only to be shocked by the racism she encountered when she stepped outside their circle of friends. May's acting career was completely destroyed. Movie studios believed that no one would want to see a white actress who was married to a black man. The constant pressure and hate, combined with Sammy's endless touring schedule and his affairs with other women, eventually destroyed their marriage. In 1968, after 8 years together, May filed for divorce, citing extreme cruelty and mental suffering. Sammy's affair with singer Lola Falana was the final breaking point, but their problems went much deeper than just cheating. After the divorce, Sammy's personal life completely fell apart. He sank deep into drugs and alcohol as a way to escape his pain. Cocaine and amyl nitrite became his constant companions. His beautiful Beverly Hills home turned into a wild party house where celebrities would come to drink heavily and use drugs. On stage, he still sparkled and amazed audiences. But off stage, he was often drunk, high, and completely out of control. The gap between his public success and his private misery grew wider and wider every day. In 1970, He married dancer Alto Vice Gore in a ceremony officiated by Reverend Jesse Jackson. They adopted a son named Manny in 1989, just 1 year before Sammy's death. Alto Vice gave him some stability, but their life together was far from peaceful or calm. Their mansion became infamous throughout Hollywood for its wild parties. Rumors spread about wife-swapping and orgies that supposedly took place there regularly. Through all of this chaos, Alto Vice stayed loyal to Sammy as he battled his addiction problems and later fought throat cancer. Sammy's gambling addiction played a huge role in ruining him financially. Even though he earned around $50 million during his entire career, and sometimes made as much as $185,000 in a single night, he died owing the IRS over $7 million in unpaid taxes. He could easily lose $40,000 in just one night at the gambling tables in Las Vegas. Unlike Frank Sinatra, whose gambling debts were often mysteriously forgiven, Sammy always had to pay back everything he owed. Bad business deals and shady tax shelters that his advisors recommended made his financial problems even worse. His incredible generosity also played a part in his downfall. He supported many people financially and consistently spent far beyond his means. Despite all his personal problems, Sammy continued to achieve incredible professional success. In June 1972, he reached the very top of the music charts for the first and only time in his career. His version of The Candyman hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song sold over 2 million copies and earned him a gold record. This was particularly surprising because Sammy actually hated the song when he first heard it. I've Got to Be Me became his personal anthem and the song he was most identified with. Released in 1968, the song's powerful message about living life fully and staying true to yourself spoke directly to Sammy's lifelong fight for identity and acceptance. He had faced racism, religious prejudice, and had even lost his left eye in that terrible car crash. But he never let any of these challenges break his spirit. He often ended his shows with this song, turning each performance into a statement of defiance and hope. Las Vegas truly became Sammy's kingdom. By the late 1960s, he was earning up to $25,000 per week there. He helped change the city's racist policies by constantly demanding equal treatment for himself and other black performers. His shows were absolutely dazzling combinations of singing, dancing, impressions, and comedy that left audiences speechless. His success helped transform Las Vegas into the entertainment capital that it became. On television, Sammy continued to break down barriers that had never been broken before. In the 1960s and 1970s, he was a regular guest on shows like The Ed Sullivan Show and The Tonight Show. His own variety series in 1966 made history as one of the very first network shows hosted by a black star. He could sing beautifully, dance amazingly, tell jokes that made people laugh until they cried, and do impressions that were so perfect they seemed impossible. But throughout all of this success, the darker side of his life was never far away. His drug use and drinking got worse and worse during his years of exploring the occult and mysticism. Friends described nights filled with cocaine, endless amounts of alcohol, and wild excess that seemed to have no limits. Sammy himself admitted that he wanted to try everything life had to offer, but it left him completely drained and empty inside. The deeper he went into these dark pursuits, the harder it became for him to control his demons. He became unreliable as a performer, sometimes ending shows after performing just one song. Even though he eventually quit using cocaine, his battle with alcohol stayed with him for the rest of his life. In 1987, fans all over the world were absolutely thrilled when Sammy decided to reunite with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin for what they called the Together Again tour. Later, when Liza Minnelli joined them, it became known as the Ultimate Event. This tour was much bigger than anything the Rat Pack had ever attempted before. Instead of playing in small nightclubs, they performed in massive arenas that could hold between 10,000 and 25,000 people. The first show took place at the Oakland Coliseum on March 13, 1988. At first, it felt like pure magic to see these legends together again. But soon, serious cracks began to show. Dean Martin was already 70 years old, and the constant traveling and late-night partying were simply too much for him to handle. After performing in just 5 shows, he left the tour, claiming he had kidney problems. The tour had to pause temporarily, but Sinatra and Sammy refused to give up. They brought in Liza Minnelli to replace Dean, and the show continued. They finished the American portion of the tour in Miami in January 1989, then took their act to Japan, Australia, and Europe. The tour finally ended in May 1989, but for Sammy, a much bigger battle was just beginning. In August 1989, Sammy began to lose his sense of taste completely. His throat felt constantly sore and painful. When he finally went to see doctors, they gave him absolutely heartbreaking news. He had throat cancer, and it was serious. All those years of smoking up to 4 packs of cigarettes every single day had finally caught up with him. Sammy faced an impossible choice. He could let surgeons remove his voice box completely, which would save his life but end his singing career forever. Or he could try radiation treatment to keep his voice, knowing that this option was much more dangerous. Without hesitation, Sammy chose his voice. He would rather die as a singer than live without being able to perform. He went through 8 brutal weeks of radiation treatment that left him weak and sick. At first, it seemed like the treatment was working. The tumor actually shrank, and Sammy even managed to return to the stage a few more times. But by early 1990, the cancer had returned and was spreading rapidly throughout his body. Surgery was no longer possible. Sammy could barely whisper, and his weight dropped to only about 60 pounds. The disease slowly took away his strength, then his voice, and finally his life. On May 16, 1990, at age 64, Sammy Davis Jr. died at his Beverly Hills home. His incredible gift to the world had been silenced by the very habit that had helped fuel his long nights and endless performances. But the sadness and shock didn't end with his death. When Sammy died, the devastating truth about his finances became public knowledge. Despite earning millions and millions of dollars over 6 decades of performing, he owed more than $5 million in unpaid taxes to the IRS. With penalties and interest that had built up over the years, that debt had grown to $7 million. His entire estate was worth around $4 million, but the IRS took absolutely everything to pay what he owed. His wife Altovice was left to pick up all the pieces of their shattered financial life. Because she had signed their tax returns, she now shared responsibility for the entire debt. She was forced to sell their 11,000-square-foot mansion for $2.7 million, but most of that money went directly to paying off the mortgage. The debts seemed endless. Sammy still owed $2,000 for tuxedos, $3,500 for groceries, and $118,000 on a shopping center mortgage. Even his life insurance money and future royalties went straight to the IRS. Altovice fought legal battles for years and years. By 1997, she finally reached a settlement with the IRS, but she had lost almost everything she and Sammy had built together. The world watched in complete shock as one of its brightest stars faded away, not just in health, but in financial ruin as well. The heartbreak deepened even more with the auction that followed Sammy's death. In September 1991, more than 1,800 people gathered in Los Angeles to buy pieces of Sammy's life. Over 500 of his most personal items went up for sale to the highest bidders. His gold record for The Candyman sold for $4,275. A pair of his tap shoes brought in $11,000. People bought his jewelry, his scrapbooks, his walking sticks, and even his hats. The entire auction raised $439,000, but this barely made even a small dent in that $7 million tax bill. Altovice wept openly as she watched her husband's most treasured possessions leave her hands forever. To make the situation even worse, some of Sammy's most valuable things had mysteriously gone missing before the auction even took place. And this is where our story takes its most incredible turn, bringing us back to that mysterious storage unit that sat locked and forgotten for 30 long years. In late 1991, a 28-year-old man named Matthias Hornick received a very strange bill in the mail. It was for $365 for a storage unit that he had never rented in his entire life. His identity had been stolen and used to rent this unit. The storage company, A1 Self-Storage in Burbank, looked into the situation and discovered that the unit had been rented using completely fake information. Afraid that the storage unit might be hiding something dangerous like weapons or explosives, the manager immediately called the police. When they finally opened that locker after all those years, what they found inside was absolutely shocking and incredible. The storage unit was filled with Sammy Davis Jr.'s personal treasures that everyone thought had been lost forever. There was a trumpet, an antique record player, a jukebox containing The Candyman, clothing, important documents, and precious photographs that told the story of his entire life. Someone had rented that storage unit just 2 weeks after the auction, trying to hide these priceless items from the IRS and the public. Police quickly learned that an employee who worked for Altovice had helped hide these items in the storage unit. He claimed that the IRS was trying to take everything that had belonged to Sammy, and he was desperately trying to save whatever he could for the family. They had used stolen identification and paid the rent in cash every month. If they had just kept making those payments, no one would have ever discovered what was hidden inside. But the most shocking discovery wasn't the items themselves. It was what was documented in those papers and recordings that had been hidden away. According to the original document, investigators found letters that revealed secrets about Sammy's real mother's identity. They discovered tapes of conversations that could have destroyed entire careers if they had ever been made public. And most incredibly, they found proof of what really happened during that terrifying situation with Kim Novak in 1958. Sammy had documented everything. Every threat, every conversation, every secret deal that had been made behind closed doors. He had kept detailed records of the most dangerous and explosive secrets in Hollywood history. For 30 years, these secrets had been waiting in that dark storage unit, unknown to the world. When the IRS finally found out about the hidden storage unit, they immediately seized all the items, hoping to recover more money toward that $7 million debt. Altovice claimed she knew absolutely nothing about the secret storage unit or how Sammy's belongings had ended up there. This hidden cache was just another sad and mysterious chapter in a story that was already filled with talent, fame, love, struggle, and ultimate downfall. The discovery of this storage unit revealed that even in death, Sammy Davis Jr. continued to surprise and shock people. The man who had seemed to live his entire life in the bright spotlight had actually been keeping some of the biggest and most dangerous secrets in entertainment history. Those documents and tapes contained information that could have changed how we understood not just Sammy's life, but the entire entertainment industry of that era. Today, Sammy Davis Jr. is remembered as one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. He broke down barriers that seemed impossible to break. He fought racism with talent, grace, and incredible determination. He showed the world that a one-eyed black Jewish entertainer could become one of the biggest stars in history through pure talent and refusal to give up. But the discovery of that storage unit reminds us that even our biggest heroes have hidden depths and secret struggles that we may never fully understand. Sammy's life was a complex mix of incredible triumph and devastating tragedy. He achieved heights that seemed impossible, but he also paid prices that were almost too heavy to bear. His story teaches us about the cost of breaking barriers, the price of challenging society's rules, and the incredible strength it takes to keep going when the whole world seems to be against you. Even though he died owing millions of dollars and struggling with addiction, his legacy as a performer and as a fighter for civil rights continues to inspire people all around the world. The secrets in that storage unit may have been hidden for 30 years, but Sammy's impact on music, movies, television, and civil rights will last forever. He showed us that true greatness comes not from being perfect, but from refusing to give up no matter how hard life gets. If this incredible story amazed you as much as it amazed me, please hit that like button right now. Share this video with anyone who loves fascinating true stories about Hollywood legends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss another incredible story like this one. There are so many more shocking secrets and hidden truths waiting to be discovered, and I can't wait to share them all with you. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know about your favorite stars, because the truth is often stranger and more incredible than fiction.